I was in San Francisco previously, and I never actually, like, you always kind of see this on, like, jokingly on, like, memes and stuff like that, and I don't know if this guy was serious or not, but he walked by and he's like, birds aren't real. That's what it was all about. And he's just, like, walking casually down the street talking about how birds aren't real. Like, that whole, like, BS conspiracy theory.
They're robots.
And I was like, I never thought I'd actually see the one in the wild.
Oh, you saw it in person, eh?
Yeah.
There's a lot of drones out there, man.
Yeah, maybe.
So does it only apply to birds or other animals too?
Probably squirrels aren't real too.
Squirrels.
Think about
Anything
it.
that has a good view of height.
Yeah.
Get a nice drone squirrel in the tree.
Actually, I just had a thought. So, okay, if aliens, maybe it's possible that aliens did actually visit our planet. They're just the size of crickets. So when they came in, like their entire spaceship with thousands of them on it would have just been like the size of a football. So it would have just bypassed all our radars. We would have never known. And they would have just like landed. We always think that they're our size or bigger. But isn't it entirely plausible that they could be much smaller than us, that we just wouldn't even know?
100%.
I agree.
100% agree. I've always said if there are aliens, I don't think they look like us. Like that's the sign of our arrogance. Yeah, they look like us. They're just kind of green, and they have skinny bodies. Like, why would they look like us? What if they're just like, I don't know, bacteria, and they just hang out and listen to us and make fun of us? Doesn't make sense.
They're probably so advanced, like we can't even see them, but they can see us.
Or they're like outstanding humans, like Michio Kaku and Michael Jordan. I don't know. And we're just like, yeah, he's really smart, or this guy's really athletic, but really they're aliens. I don't know. We're just talking smack. Let's go with bacteria. They're bacteria and cockroaches.
Could be. It's possible. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought about that. It would make sense. Yeah, but we're not here to talk about aliens today. We're going to talk about something completely different. Greetings and fist bumps. This is the Raised Eyebrow podcast, where we discuss how people just peopling can make it weird to be a person sometimes. But somebody's got to do it. And we are your hosts, Kojo, Mike, and Alex. In this week's episode, we're going to discuss, the ability to discuss, speech, and the freedom to use it. And if social media has taught me anything, people love to talk about their pets, their new shoes, and argue with random strangers about tax reform. But when you really think about it, what is free speech anyways? So, using our power of free speech, how are you guys?
I'm allowed to say that I'm okay. I'm doing well.
I will allow that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
I think I would disagree.
Yeah, you disagree, so you can't.
Yeah, because I shouldn't be okay him being
okay. Oh man, cancel immediately. So I think the question today, or I guess one of the main themes to summarize this topic is what's happening with Twitter. The past, how long has it been now since Elon
8 months
has taken over?
Almost a year. Yeah.
Crazy, right? But I think the question is, what do Twitter and free speech have in common? I think the answer is, in my opinion, that they shouldn't be censored. But first, let's rewind and figure out how we got here, like what exactly led to our buddy Elon taking over Twitter. Do you guys have can you guys summarize this quickly?
Yeah, to summarize.
Okay. I would say Twitter has been having some issues for some time now, and I think brother Elon thought perhaps maybe he has some solutions to kind of fix it.
They're losing to Facebook, Instagram, which is both Meta. The LinkedIn they have their own niche going on, right? But Twitter was kind of like losing its way, and there was this whole cancel culture thing, right? But the tipping point was around Trump and like Trump getting taken off. And I'm not necessarily like agree or disagree with what Trump says. However, I do think that he does have a right to have speech, and like by taking off like a president of the United States or someone of that stature, or really anybody, because they don't toe a particular line. I think that's what kind of triggers maybe the bad word in this case, or not the operative word. He encouraged Elon Musk to pursue a purchase of Twitter because he sees it as like a town square. And in a town square, if you go back to like the beginnings of democracy in ancient Greece, was that they would have a town square and there was a soapbox, or not a soapbox, but like there was like a box that people would stand on, and they would kind of like say their views on things, and there'd be a dialogue and there'd be an argument. But even though you would debate with each other, you know, it may get heated, but the point is that it's about the dialogue and it's about the debate. It's about trying to find the answers to what's actually happening, because you may think you have the answer, but usually what happens is that when you enter into a conversation with somebody, you realize that somebody else also has answers too. And it just comes down to, it's not a matter of my answer versus your answer, but it's a matter of what part of my answers are justified and valid, what part of your answers are justified and valid, trying to find a consensus on the issue so that you can actually move forward. But the only way you actually achieve that is actually by having dialogue. And if you eliminate people from that dialogue, then you effectively lose that dialogue, and you effectively lose freedom of speech.
Yeah, well said. And it's about having that dialogue in good faith, as opposed to like this, you know, tribal obsession.
This argument is something that is, to me, is part of what I like to classify as a dream of America, which has not yet been seen. Like creating a place where everyone has a voice and an opinion. And for the longest time, certain people have been shot for not being able to, you know, voice their opinion. So it's kind of interesting how, like, even in all the programs that we've created, all those apps that it's still embedded in it. Even though we're trying to create that world where people can say what they have on their minds, but then we still shut some people down.
Yeah.
And again, it becomes an issue where it's like, okay, so what if someone is harming someone? Like, should we still listen to that person?
Well, I think it comes down to, like, let's debate the ideas. Let's pursue the truth. And yeah, the argument is, okay, but what's the cutoff point? Because what is it, like, words induce violence or something like that? That's what the protests, that the rallying cry for, like, no, like, we can't have Trump on Twitter, you know. And in some instances, sure, it is the case. So it's something we have to manage. But I think we have to, like you said, the American dream. I think it was developed at the time because people that were coming to America didn't have freedom where they were coming from. So, you know, they got close to it in America, or at least many groups did. Others did not. And it hasn't been perfect, that's for sure. But America, and to a great extent, the West, has been able to have freedom of speech. You know, you can't yell fire in a crowded room, but for the most part, and it's not freedom from consequences from the speech, but there should be an ability to say opinions.
Yeah, I think freedom, like, that's the most important part there, is like you have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom from the consequences of your speech. There's a difference between the two, right? So when you speak, you accept the responsibility of your speech, the same way that you accept responsibility of the car that you are driving down the road. You know, so if you were to hit something, you can't say, well, it wasn't me that hit it, it was the car. It's like, well, who was responsible for it? So that's kind of the way I look at it. I think that's a good way of putting it too.
Yeah. There's this guy, I forgot his name, but he has this concept, and it's a very interesting concept. So basically, the idea is that if you are speaking your mind, you shouldn't be filtered. Like, you should be given the freedom to actually say what's on your mind, because you're still forming the idea as you speak.
Yeah.
So the act of actually speaking allows you to actually, but then you might, like, you know, hurt someone by saying something, because you're still in the process of, like, you know, creating it. And so then when you do that, you shouldn't be penalized, because you're still thinking your idea.
For sure.
And you can actually shape it. Yeah, so through debates, you can probably learn other people that you're debating with, so that you can actually come up with, a good solution.
Definitely.
Yeah. So like two things or a couple things to that one. So like, I do agree. Like if you are in a conversation, like with like close friends or close people, and you're having like, you're learning about something kind of on the fly, so you have yet to kind of really formulate your opinion on it, then yeah, like you may take missteps in the particular process, but it depends on who you're with and who your audience is and who you're having the conversation with. Like if you're on like national television and you're kind of like still formulating your thoughts, then maybe butt out of the particular conversation.
Agreed.
But if you're among friends and you're in a conversation setting where you can explore those new ideas or you can challenge them, then I'd say, yeah, like power to you, right? But the most important thing that I ever learned about free speech was, this was coming from like my professor in communication studies. He said that like before you engage in free speech, you have to first listen to the dialogue, like what is actually being said, and understand it. Because if you don't understand what the conversation is about, and you just basically just jump in and start basically saying whatever you want to say, then you're not helping anything, and you're just talking under your ass, basically.
Pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people shouldn't talk in public.
Yeah, and there are a lot was on social media.
This was actually true.
just hang out on Twitter. Funny enough.
Yeah.
But
So
go ahead, Kojo.
Yeah, so Malcolm Gladwell had a debate here in Toronto, and in one of his podcasts, he mentions how he went in thinking he was going to win the debate, so he so he sat down. But one thing that he noticed was he wasn't actually listening to the other guy, and the other guy was like really like he was like ready to rip.
Was this Douglas Murray? Do you know who the other guy was?
I don't remember. I think it's a British guy.
Murray. Yeah, I love Douglas Murray. That was a great debate, but he tore into Malcolm Gladwell. Like I think I watched it. And Gladwell got beat up.
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah,
intellectually speaking.
Yeah, but it was nice that he actually said that he wasn't listening.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
he admits.
I've seen that a lot too.
That's
like they would talk down to them.
A lot of respect for people who can say.
Yeah.
I was going to say I have a lot of respect for people who can say that they're wrong, right? Especially in today's culture, it's just my thought is the best. Like, calm down, Dave.
I saw one debate where it was Gladwell and Matt Taibbi. He used to work for Rolling Stone. Now he's independent. He's the one who broke the Twitter files, or had the files handed to him, and then he kind of publicized them or was involved in that. And Gladwell kept like kind of like name dropping the fact that he's a part-time writer for the New Yorker and stuff like that, and it's like
not a real journalist.
Yeah, it's like, well, you're not a real journalist. It's like define journalism, really. Like, like I watch or have seen, cable news, television, and stuff like that. We'll get into them later, but it's like I wouldn't even call that journalism. You're just basically just regurgitating the same talking points in just a different flavor. It's it's news dramatized.
Which propaganda company is better at their propaganda.
Yeah,
but that's the debate I was talking about. It was Gladwell and I forget the Alain de Botton, who's a Swiss philosopher, and then that was on one side, and then on the other side it was Matt Taibbi and Douglas Murray, and I think the topic was something like is mainstream journalism better? I don't know exactly what the topic was, but I have to look that up. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, I notice usually people do that because they don't want to lose their train of thought. Like it's like they have an idea in their head and they don't want to just forget. Because you might listen to the other person and forget your points.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was another debate with Gladwell. It's a bit older. It was like it was against Steven Pinker, and it was like, is the world in a good spot right now? Something like that. Like, and Pinker's argument was that it's the best society has ever been on a global scale in history, and Gladwell said it's not. Like, it's actually pretty bad right now, and I think he lost that debate too, in my opinion. I don't know if he's commented on that one, but he had some points. But I think his style of debating was just off. With respect to Mr. Gladwell, I think he doesn't listen to what the other person's saying, and he kind of fixates on his points, whereas the other debaters zone in on an idea and go into more detail, which is, I think, like if we're having a conversation, I can't just like, it's like I'm not listening to you. I just think, okay, I'm going to say this, this, and this. And if you say something, I can't just like brush it off. I have to reply to what you're saying so we can get to the bottom of what the topic is. And it's almost like that's what the problem was on Twitter for so many years. And I don't know if Elon buying or taking over Twitter has fixed that, but
well, I mean, he's only had it for less than a year. But
yeah,
I'd give him a little bit of time. But that goes like to that point is like, but first listen to the debate or first listen to the dialogue before you engage in the debate. And he's not doing 100%. That, right? And that's the lesson there. Right.
Yeah, it's almost like have you heard in sports like you're playing not to lose as opposed to playing to play the game, like to win.
Yeah,
like if you play the game properly, you're going to win if your debate is good and if your game is good, whatever. But if you're just trying to survive, it's like you're not going to make it. You know.
I think it's usually very hard for people to like learn that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because if you're listening to the other person, then that means your idea is not valid enough.
Yeah, oftentimes it's not the case. Like you could both be right and you could both be a little bit wrong, right? But I think like it's almost like when you challenge someone, like, you know, setting a boundary or something, could be anything. Your mother-in-law, you know, well, you know, I don't want to go to the party. I don't know, whatever. Like people don't like to be challenged. It's almost like a instinctive reaction, like, oh, like don't come after me, and you immediately you have a response, as opposed to like, oh, like let me see where you're coming from in this instance, right? I think that's an interesting part of human nature that we all do, myself included. And then I've watched my thoughts when this happens over the years. When I was young, I'd be like, oh, well, like, how dare you challenge me? You know, but you know, as you mature, you realize, okay, like, hold on, let's wait a second here. What's this person trying to tell me? You know?
You learn a lot if you actually listen.
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
You're gonna say something, Alex?
Well, you can't listen if you're talking, because all you hear is your own voice rattling around your own head. Well, it's true, right? So, like going back to a point that Kojo was saying previously about, like, you know, you're trying to formulate your own thoughts. Like your mind, the way that it works, the way that it functions is there's like your reactionary minds, like typically dubbed your animal minds, something that's like fight or flight, how you react to a situation. That part of your brain doesn't think about stuff. It just reacts. It thinks. It just like, I'm hungry. I want this. You know, I'm bored. Let's do this. It's very childish in its behavior. Your more evolved, intelligent mind takes a while to kick in. You probably always have like a situation would happen. An hour after the situation happens, your mind's like, oh, you should have done this. And it's like, thank you for coming in an hour later and telling me what I should have done.
It's too late now.
And that's also goes back to the point where it's like, if you first listen to the dialogue, you're kind of taking in this information and kind of formulating your own thoughts and doing your own research. And then you engage in the debate, because then you actually have a formulated idea of what it is that you think of in the particular conversation at hand, right? And then you're using your free speech appropriately and well.
Yeah. I think the variable now is people are so easily offended. Right. And so you don't have time to listen because you're already in fight or flight. So you're in a battle, but like you don't need to be. Like you can just have the talk. But then the other person's also in the battle. So it's like, okay, like let's fight now, I guess. So I don't know what the solution is to this. I know Elon has implemented like his own fact-checking team, something like that.
Yeah. Well, AI bots too are doing it.
Awesome.
Like they would comb through, because it's all text, right? So they would comb through it, and then they would be like, wait, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And then the bots would flag stuff, and then it would kind of like raise issues on things. But that's, I mean, that's part of it too, right? You know, what you say has consequences, right? And you can't just say nonsense all the time. And even like the view counter for tweets, I think it was like the New York Times who had this. They have like all these followers, but then when the view counters for their tweets went up, the view counter was like really low than what they thought it actually was, and they didn't like that at all.
Surprise.
Yeah, write stuff of substance.
Is the view count when usually someone sees a tweet, a message, and then just instead of reading, you just forward it to a friend?
I think it's just like people who kind of slowed down and like hesitated, because you can kind of count that way. Like it's usually based on like a pixel, so there'd be like a pixel inside of the tweet. How long was this pixel displayed on the screen? Because once you scroll up, it's not displayed on the screen anymore. So how long was it displayed? And if it crosses a certain time threshold, then you count it as a view, because it would have been long enough for the person to like have read it, like, oh, okay, and then move on. So
makes sense.
That's the way I would have understood it if I was building it. But I remember when I was in university, we had this one class where we studied a lot of propaganda. Like we read propaganda texts, we studied propaganda, and the professor was he was from Chile, and what he did was there's two Chilean newspapers that were very prominent. One was sympathetic to the government in power, and then one was not. They were opposed to them. And he got half the class to read one newspaper article, and he got the other half of the class to read the other newspaper article. But he never told anybody that we were all reading different articles. We all thought we were reading the same article. So there was like a 5-minute break in class. He handed it out. We all read the article. And then he's like, okay, tell me what happened. And, half of the class was like, well, there was a murder. The other half of the class was like, where are you getting murder from? Murder is not mentioned in this article at all. There's no murder. It was an accident. No, it wasn't an accident. It was a murder. And there's the debate. Because you have two completely different, same thing happened, but two completely different stories about one was a murder and one was, I think it was just like an accident that happened. I got the murder article. I didn't read the other article. But yeah, and then he kind of revealed to the class what was actually happening, right? And then he did the same thing with... Go ahead.
So then what's how do you solve that problem? Do you both sides just do more research? Like, how does that go?
Yeah, read both papers. Yeah, that's how you solve it. Yeah, like, if you watch... Well, I mean, we'll get to the TV news in a second, but if you read the New York Times, like read... What is a right-wing paper anyways? The New York Post, I guess, would be the opposite. If we're going for like New York rights. People. Or Washington.
Center right.
Or Washington Post and what's the other? There's a right-wing Washington paper too. I can't remember what they are.
We'll do a goggle.
Yeah.
We'll do a goggle later.
I don't know. Right-wing media is always typically on cable news, which on cable news,
I guess perhaps maybe people watch more than read.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
but left-wing media is on cable news as well, and I would argue there's more left-wing media overall. Could be wrong about that, but
yeah, there are more left-wing news outlets than there are right-wing.
I think so,
and there are more people who vote Democrat in the U.S. I think. No, sorry, because the popular vote was equal.
Last time, yeah.
I don't. Yeah, maybe scratch that.
I think usually the popular vote goes to the Democrats, but the what do you call the state representation? Whatever point system they have there.
Oh, the delegates.
The delegates, because South Dakota needs two delegates. That oftentimes goes to the Republicans. So it is what it is. But anyway, we digress. Just very quickly, did you have a thought, Alex?
No, go ahead.
Just going back to Elon Musk, you mentioned how it's like he recognized the lack of free speech on Twitter as a problem. That's why he made it a mission to actually buy Twitter. I listened to an interview on Bill Maher. That was like a couple weeks ago. It's really good. It's like 20 minutes. And they have like a heart-to-heart on this whole thing, but they both agree that there's something called the woke mind virus, and that was the driving force behind what, for Musk, it was very existential for him, which is it's interesting to see that. He put billions of dollars into this, and he didn't need to. So I wrote down a few notes from that really quick. He says that, and this is like the back and forth in the interview with Bill Maher. Either he or Maher say that it's pushing civilization towards suicide, it's anti-meritocratic, and results in the suppression of free speech. This is like all the woke stuff. You can't question things. Even the questioning of things is bad, aka cancel culture, which you were saying, Kojo, earlier. And then free speech is censored by wokeness. Free speech used to be a beacon of liberal values, ironically enough, and now wokeness is the opposite of liberalism. And then they both go on to say that they're both classical liberals. Like Elon Musk built his empire on like energy and like saving the environment with a energy sustainable car, things like that. So it was an interesting interview. Check that out on YouTube. It's on there. It's about 20 minutes. You'll see it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kojo.
I find Elon tends to do a lot of this existential, like, saving.
Let's go to Mars.
Mankind. Yeah, like the Mars mission is that, and then Twitter also to him falls under that. I don't see where he gets that from, but I can see maybe disagreement starting a war between people.
Of course.
But anyway, yeah,
his whole thing is like you should be able to. It was either him or Bill Maher again. I forget, but within that conversation, they both agreed that you should be able to listen to your worst enemy, like the person that says the most vile thing should still be able to say it. Like, someone who denies slavery or the Holocaust should still be able to say it. And then we're going to have a debate and we're going to prove what the truth is. Speaking of the Holocaust, I know we don't talk about Jewish things on this show, but I'll make an exception this time. Really quick, I went to it's kind of like a TED Talk conference for like intellectual Jewish ideas a couple weeks ago. Me and my wife went to that. It's called Limud. It was in Toronto. Interesting little event. But one of the seminars was anti-Semitism and social media. And funny enough, there was a point in January around the time Elon was running things where it spiked like crazy. So, I mean, it sucks, but even still, I think free speech should still exist, and you should find a way to debate the ideas. Yeah,
Didn't Elon even censor certain people after he bought Twitter?
I don't know. I think there was some controversy, like people were calling him a hypocrite, but I don't know if he censored them. I know he kicked out certain people, but there was a reason for it. I just can't remember. Should have done more research. I apologize to our listeners. Was it like some journalists?
Twitter. Since you got Twitter,
it's just been such a vortex.
Yeah.
I think there was a reason why, and he was able to prove that it's a legitimate reason, but I mean that's subjective potentially.
Yeah.
But I don't have enough details.
Sometimes I think sometimes it was just because he was having a back and forth with somebody, and he just kind of wanted to show that he's willing to go to the extent that he needs to go, because the other person was kind of challenging him. But I don't think
he's a hypocrite in that case. But I want to know what his reason was. I believe in Elon. I'm an Elon supporter. So,
well, like the user base of Twitter is getting smaller because what he's trying to do is the reason why he's trying to put in paid accounts is to make it so that bots can't actually replicate themselves. And then if you're a part of like a nefarious group, and you want to spur a particular group of people towards hatred on this other group of people, doesn't matter who, they all do it, is you can use bots to kind of do that. So in the comment section, all these bots would say all this kind of stuff, and they're all fake accounts. And Twitter had a really bad issue with policing any of that, and they pretty much just kind of left it like the old Twitter. So by introducing a lot of these paywalls and these subscription programs is that you're able to kind of like filter out all that crap so that when you're actually the Twitter that you're actually seeing is actually real people engaging with other real people. And effectively the way that Musk kind of talks about it is like when you actually have real people talking to real people, more often than not, the dialogue is not, it doesn't turn into this like hate-fueled speech as quickly. Because there's no bots that are kind of spurring it on. because a lot of social networks, like YouTube, is like this a lot. There was this one YouTube channel I was watching where the people who were running it, they would go into the comments section and they would just basically like trigger people. But sometimes it would just be like jokingly. They'd be like, someone would be like, "Oh, I don't like his shoes," and someone would be like, "Oh, I think his shoes are awesome," and then like back and forth, and they're like debating it. But what happens is that the algorithm thinks that, oh, hey, this channel, this video is really popular because people are engaging with it in the comments section. So then it gets boosted up in the rankings
and then pushes it.
But really, it's just because people are just like shit talking each other, and they're just like stoking the flames.
That's funny.
And it's all so the algorithms are kind of like, I think that a lot of social media companies are kind of rethinking that algorithm, and Twitter's kind of moving in that direction.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Sorry, go ahead, Kojo.
Yeah, was the paid subscription, this Twitter Blue, the only way to like basically solve this problem? Because can't you use like maybe say a phone number, a person's real name, something like that? Right? Because
it's a good question.
I mean, I can still pay for maybe 2 accounts. It's only $8.
Yeah. Then the people who are more well off can just take over Twitter. I have 17 accounts.
Yeah, like I mean, like, but the number of bots that you would need to kind of like really add fuel to the fire would cost you a pretty penny. And then I think they're also they want to develop other ways to kind of identify which accounts are genuine and which accounts are not. And they're using AI in a lot of ways to kind of figure that out in terms of certain activities. Like a bot acts in a certain way, a human acts in a certain way.
Like for now.
Yeah, wait till the singularity.
Speaking of which, Ray Kurzweil, who predicts a singularity, he predicts that by 2029, if I'm not mistaken, that's when the Turing test will pass. Alan Turing was, how do I explain this succinctly? It's basically when
British mathematician.
But we won't know the difference between a computer and a human. And so you do like 100 questions and we judge the answers, and the Turing test is when the computer is basically the same as the human answering the questions, and we won't know the difference. So we're not there yet, but because AI and ChatGPT is starting to crawl now, we're getting, we could see a weird future. So 2029 is the prediction for that. I don't know if it's true, but let's see. Anyway,
along with that would be quantum computing. They think that by early 2030s or the end of this decade, quantum computers would actually be more robust, and that would effectively be a net new computer. So all computers that exist today on a fundamental level operate on binary code, so zeros and ones, which is borrowed from the Turing machine, which is the first computer that Alan Turing made in World War II to break Nazi codes. So like every coding language is essentially just kind of built upon that in terms of how do you interpret the zeros and the ones. And AI right now is very much like that. It's not artificial intelligence. It's more so simulated intelligence. But with the quantum computer is that we would move past that binary code phase and into quantum computing, which uses, I think it's down to like the atomic level or molecular level to actually define or how programs would run on that level, which does not use code or the code that we know today. And it would run and operate much, much faster. And you could effectively figure out through a series of tests like a cure for diabetes in like a matter of minutes kind of thing. Like that's how
a broken spine,
blazingly fast.
Michio Kaku was talking about this on I think it was on Joe Rogan a few weeks back. It's so hard to, like, for a dummy like me, it's so hard to picture the future. But
that's why I believe it was still like the computer will still not be able to understand humans, because there's still gonna be dummy people like us making mistakes on basic.
They won't be the ones programming the quantum.
The computer will be too smart. We'll be like, what are you talking about?
We're screwed.
You know what my prediction
You
is
just want to
for
have
the
some
future?
beer and like, you know, like some chicken
What's
wings.
that, Alex?
Here's my prediction of the future. You're hearing it 8 years in advance. So my prediction for the future is that humans won't really go anywhere, and you already see signs of this today. Is if you look at certain technologies, certain aspects of our life, is that we're going back to our roots as a species, like these kind of like handcrafted, hand carved things, like cobblers are making a comeback, vinyl records are making a comeback. Like carpentry is making a comeback, like things where you make it by hand, where there's like a human doing it. And I think that when we get to the point where you have all this automated technology all around you, it would essentially free you up from all of these rote tasks where you can actually just kind of like finally get that chisel back out and, actually like whittle away at, a piece of wood and make a cabinet. And you can like actually do things with your hands again, because all these other trivial matters are taken care of.
Don't you think people will still outsource it to a computer to do it for them? Like,
but you can't outsource
3D printers,
but you can't get a computer to resole your shoes, or to to like build something, like to actually like build something of genuine value, right? Like even IKEA furniture has to be assembled by a human.
Right. The question to some of these things is, do people really care? Like, you and I would want to sit down and listen to a vinyl. Like, we love that. But do people really care about, like, the general person on the street? Like, do they care?
I think they break into two groups. I think that part of the society does, because they have the time in their day to care about it. But I think that there's a large portion of society that is so busy and so bogged down with just these trivial tasks in life that automated technology could just easily do away with, where they can finally free up that time to actually care. So I don't think it's that they don't care, given the opportunity, they would, right? Or they would care about the things that really matter to them.
Yeah.
People are going to relearn to be people. Basically,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Just be human.
Which is a good segue into like my main thought that we're leading to about free speech. But you were going to say something, Mike?
No, go for it. What's the
main
thought?
My main thought with free speech is that if you look at humans as a species for millennia, we have always explored. Everything we do is we explore. We explore our minds. We explore just the metaphysical things. That's where religion comes from. We explore science. We explore ideas. We explore fantasies. We explore stories. We take a story and we would like tweak it several times over and over and over again. Like the hero's journey gets told over and over and over again. You got the Epic of Gilgamesh. And then in today's society, you got Star Wars, Marvel Comics, Harry Potter. And we continuously explore what it means to be human, what it means to be alive, what it means to be in love, what it means to feel loss. And these are things that are ingrained in us as a species. And what it takes to explore is that you're kind of venturing into that unknown. Like you don't really know where you'll end up in that endeavor. And you're kind of relying on the tools that you have and the people that you have with you in that exploration. Like when Captain Cook kind of wanted to sail around and circumvent the world on a ship, he didn't know if he would actually get back. But he had to rely on the tools that he had and the crew on the ship to actually do that. I mean, he never ended up making it back because he ended up making a return trip to Hawaii, and they thought it was a sign from their gods, so they killed him. But that's beside the point. But anyways, like, you kind of rely on, like Magellan, same thing. Like when the astronauts went to the moon and, eventually in due time go back to the moon, go to Mars, is that you're relying on these, like you're kind of on the fringes of what humans have been able to do. In many ways, if you look at just the general person and the way that they live their life, is that they don't explore anymore. Everything on your Instagram feed is curated to you, so that you don't have to explore new ideas. You go to your news app, and the only apps that are on your phone that are news apps are the ones that align to whatever echo chamber that you're in. you talk to your friends about the same things you talk to them about. Now we subscribe to streaming services, which are even more filtered, so that only the streaming services that you subscribe to are the ones that you want. If you like Disney movies, you subscribe to Disney Plus, and that's all you watch. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But you're not exploring further. You're not taking new ideas. You're not challenging yourself in new ideas. And we've lost that essence in our life to explore. And the reason why freedom of speech is so important and having that dialogue in society is so important is because it encourages us and it provokes new ideas to enter our minds. And by having the willingness to listen to that dialogue is that you begin to have that willingness and that bravery to kind of explore what that idea could hold. And over time, you kind of lose the fear of those new ideas, and you begin to understand that these new ideas could lead you into new worlds.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, you're touching on the idea of novelty, essentially. Like, novelty is a form of exploration. You don't have to buy a plane ticket and go to, Zimbabwe and explore Zimbabwe, but I read somewhere that psychologically speaking, even like crossing the street on a different side of the road when you're at work, when you're going to work rather, like exploring different streets in the neighborhood, just doing things that are outside of your routine, as much as routine is important, and we are creatures of habit, just finding an ability to switch up our day-to-day can rewire our brains and add value to our lives. I don't know what that has to do with free speech, but just a thought as you were talking about that, Alex.
Well, it's listening to other people's speech that kind of, that does it, right? And then, listening to people who do explore new ideas, right? Like, let's look at probably the most popular podcast out there, which is Joe Rogan Experience. And I mean, he listens to anybody who comes on, right? And he may not agree with them, but at least he puts them on the air. And even when it was controversial, like during COVID, he put 2 scientists on there who had opposing views that were contrary to what the CDC and what other governments were kind of trying to get the society to kind of agree with. But he had 2 people on his podcast, I can't remember their names, which kind of sparked a whole bunch of controversy from him, where Spotify had to come in and back him up. Yeah. But he gave him a microphone, because you have to challenge those new ideas. And the only way that you can explore is by kind of venturing into them.
Right. Yeah, that's what you're saying about the exploration. Explore other ideas.
I think the idea of freedom of speech, this is just a thought that just came up to my mind. I think it's kind of like a gradient. So you have on far ends are the extremes, and in the middle is where we want to be. Because then it can go to a point where it's like too crazy or too
safe,
something
too
else.
Safe. Yeah, 100%. Like, you don't want to swim too far in the waves.
Yeah.
You want to have enough fun where the waves are just entertaining enough, and then you don't want to be on the shore because nothing's happening. So,
because even during the pandemic, one issue that I found was people like to be told what to do. Like, they wake up and they're like, like, go left, and then they go left, go right, and then they go right. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you can take the vaccination or you can choose not to. And then people are confused.
Yeah. Then you have to think.
So
I don't want to think. Just tell me what to do.
They didn't know what to do either, as it turns out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's something about, like, it's easy to like be comfortable when you're comfortable. just bear with me as I go through this thought. But when society starts breaking down, like a pandemic, like, people become there's an ugliness to people. Like, they become more tribal. They become more I guess the primal urge to survive hits, and you need to follow a leader. You need to follow someone who can tell you what to do. And if someone doesn't do it, then, kick them out of the tribe, kind of thing. I'm just working through this thought. Like, there's an interesting darkness to humans. I guess it's Lord of the Flies, right? Those boys on the island, where the argument is that, are we good or are we bad? I think we're both, I'm going into a random thought pattern now, but
no, I think you're on the right track.
We saw that during the pandemic.
Yeah, because
I think so too. It's an interesting thought to explore.
the people
Bring
who
it full
had
circle.
the people who had things figured out was like they're the ones who, like, given a situation where they, like, I remember my uncle was an example. Like he has like a science background, and so what did he do? Like because everyone had like the collective rug pulled out from underneath them, right? And if you don't have like skills to kind of like, what do you do when all of the world is kind of like turned upside down? He just kind of started to read like all these like different studies, and that's how he understood what was going on. Like he didn't pay attention to the politicians, he didn't pay attention to like what health organizations or what doctors were saying. He just read the studies. What are the scientists saying, right? And because he was able to understand it to a greater extent than the average person, it made sense to him, right? And that's just one example, is that like people kind of resorted to the skill set that they had or lack thereof to survive, right? That you didn't, kind of goes back to that exploration idea. Like you're not used to kind of being in the wilderness. You're used to kind of being all nice and comfortable at home.
Yeah, we're getting worse at it now, I think.
Definitely.
I think that's what we've come to the conclusion. Like we're just bad now.
Very bad at it. Yeah, we have no idea.
Yeah. I think like, so even for Elon, like, acquiring Twitter, some of the things that he tried to do were, I mean, perhaps maybe it's his way of going about the solutions, but perhaps maybe he should have also listened to other people as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, for why he acquired it or what he's doing with it?
No, like, I mean, the acquisition was a great thing, but then the approach, like, introducing the paid subscription. Like, there's some, filthy rich actors who are like, I'm not going to pay $8 for this. Something that is free, why do I have to pay money for? And then I think Elon himself paid for some people.
Oh, yeah.
To be on the account.
Maybe.
Athletes.
I don't know about that part. But the part of what the subscription will eventually include, this is not an ad for Twitter, by the way, is there will be more, like, he wants to be like an all-in-one app. Like, so because before Twitter was essentially just like people just tweeting shit and like arguing in the comment section and whatnot. And it was more akin to Reddit than it was to Facebook, right? Where Facebook was becoming more of like a place to kind of spend time in. Like, so yeah, sure, there's your feed, you can scroll through that, you can comment on stuff, but there's like games, there's content, there's like some organizations would like air live stuff, or some brands would air live stuff on Facebook Live, right? So there's actually like a media vehicle there for content to be created and generated. And and I think he kind of wants to move Twitter more towards that direction, where it becomes that he wants to have like, actually probably somebody who actually is very interesting, very polarizing too, is Tucker Carlson, right? Where when he was let go from Fox because his comments cost them $400 million.
Someone's got to get fired.
Yeah. You don't get sued for that much and keep your job. So he obviously he got fired, and then he announced, like, he kind of had like a lot of interesting comments on his video on Twitter. It's his video, so I'm not going to repeat what he said, but it's actually really interesting to kind of see it. And ironically, like, I don't really like follow him or pay attention to him much, but I actually do pay attention to him because he is an opposing view to where I typically align to.
Yep.
But he did have some interesting things to say. And he did do it on Twitter. And then I think, if I'm a betting man, I think that his next gig would be on Twitter. So it'd be like his show on Twitter. So it's kind of like what Spotify did with Joe Rogan, where you can only get Joe Rogan on Spotify. I think that Tucker Carlson will only be on Twitter. Yeah,
it's interesting if that's where Twitter is headed, because it's very much the trend where, and this goes back to the debate that Malcolm Gladwell was having with Taibbi and Douglas Murray, like, where is the true journalism? And if Elon Musk can create that on Twitter, you're seeing it in like Substack, where all these non-mainstream news sources are popping up, and they're actually getting better ratings and viewership than like CNN, who's slowly dying, Fox and MSNBC and all these like just talking heads and corporate entities.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think we need real journalism. If that can be Twitter, let's do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good independent journalists now.
And it's great to see. And you have
Barry Weiss is
what's
another
called
one.
Barry Weiss is great. She left the New York Times because it was, again, ironically enough, it was becoming too woke.
Yeah,
like, and she's a centrist. She's, she center left actually, but it's the world is changing. So let's see what happens.
My final thoughts or just final thoughts in general is, speech is important. Like we kind of had them all kind of peppered throughout here, but it's it comes from listening and asking questions and understanding what's going on, and most importantly, kind of exploring ideas that are new to you, and even the ideas that you're opposed to. Most importantly, explore the ideas that you are opposed to and try to figure out why.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, it's teaching the art of debate to young children especially, and not necessarily to win the debate, but to learn how to absorb ideas and information and how to articulate that. Of course you want to win. We all want to win. But it's to come to as close as possible to truth, whatever the truth is. Yeah.
Because none of us know the truth.
I don't know if I have a full thought out final thought for this, because it's a very interesting space. Because even people who try to preach free speech don't even agree in free speech.
It's easy to agree.
It's like we'll listen to you to some extent, but then we're still gonna shut you down when you say something that hurts our feelings. Yeah. So I don't know. Like it's like, or is it one of those things where we're programmed as humans to behave that way?
Yeah.
But ideally, it would be nice if, like Alex and you, Mike, said, if we're in tune to want to listen to other people and then also reshape our thinking. Because I mean, the world would be a beautiful place if we pay attention, we listen to other people, and then we also try to use it to shape our thinking.
Yeah, and I think just one last point. I think when someone says something that is, like, realistically, it is stupid, because they're out there, right? There's going to be someone who says something where you go, absolutely not. Like, you're wrong. Yeah, I know you're wrong. You have to know you're wrong. I'm going to argue with you. I think it's okay to argue, or rather to debate, because if you have the answers, then you have to find a way to articulate that in a way. Maybe it's not confrontational. Maybe you just ignore the person and you just put it out there for people listening. So you make the point, because if you're just arguing, no one's listening. It's just like, oh, they're yelling at each other. But you have to find a way to articulate what you know the truth is as best as you can with the person who you disagree with, right? It doesn't have to be like, let's hold hands and kumbaya. Listen. If the person says something that you know is crazy, then you have to find a way and you have the answers. You have to find a way to articulate that as best you can. That's it. So follow us on the social medias, raisedeyebrow.podcast. We're on Twitter and the Instagram. And remember, kids, we should all have the absolute freedom to be wrong about stuff.